Hello and you're very welcome to Baz and Andrew's House of Rugby here on Joe together with Guinness. On this week's bonus episode, Pat was out and about talking to some of Ireland's best rugby players.
Yeah, we're chatting to Lynne Cantwell and Jamie Heaslip about the new Guinness campaign, Liberty Fields, about Japan's first kind of ladies women's team.
Saw the ad, very cool.
It's class, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then also talking to Peter O'Mahony, who's basically the new face of Marks and Spencer. So he was out strutting the stuff last week. So we'll start off with Peter O'Mahony and then go into Heaslip and Lynne Cantwell.
Joe presents Baz and Andrew's House of Rugby, together with Guinness.
Right, so we're here today with Peter O'Mahony, basically the face of M&S now in their new campaign. Of all the catalogues, you're going to be on at least 60% of the pages from now on. Is that the deal?
Fingers crossed.
I was going to start off there, and it might be not a tough one, but give you a couple of seconds to think about it if it is a bit tough. But I was going to say to you, start off with the proudest achievement in your life to date.
Jeez. Start off with a handy one. I think becoming a dad for the first time.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah. I've been lucky enough to have two now, so they're probably 1 and 2 on the list.
And we were just chatting there before we started about Barry Murphy having the two. Any advice for him? Keep the head down.
Twins, different animal. Yeah, you were going to have your work cut out, kid. Best of luck.
I was at the Rugby Writers Awards there last week that Guinness had on in the storehouse there, and your father was there accepting a rake of awards for Cork Con. Looks a good bit like you there, and you can actually you can see the resemblances, and even the way he talks as well. But was he always just mad into the rugby, like as far as you can remember as well?
Yeah, he was. He was always hugely involved up in Con. He was present there last year, but he's always been involved since I can remember. Whether it was playing, bringing me up there when I was a small fella, coaching. Then when he eventually packed it in, and moving on to all the committees and whatever they do and presidential duties last year. He's like an whole piece of furniture up there.
I think it was maybe Brian Hickey or something from down there. He was saying that you were in from around 6, and he said from that age you could always tell that you were just mad into it, and you can tell that this lad was a lad to keep his eye on. Were you as confident when you were 6 years old that you were going to be a rugby player when you grew up?
No, I wasn't. I always enjoyed it though, which is the thing I loved. I used to hang around all week waiting for the Saturday to spend it in Con, and I always enjoyed it, which is a great thing. Lucky enough to make a job of it in the end, but I don't think I could ever say I was overly confident about getting there. It's not something you really think of when you're a small fella. They're kind of the teams I used to follow. They were like superhuman almost, and you kind of say to yourself, "I'd never end up like that," but I enjoy playing it anyway, so I'll stick at it. And luckily, and here we are.
I remember at the time you were chatting before about saying how when you first got into Munster you shadowed Anthony Foley wherever he went, and number 8 as well was the ambition. And was there lads in Con who would have played for like Munster and Ireland that you would have been likewise when you were like kind of 8, 9, 10, like that you would have? These are as you said, the superheroes, superhuman lads.
Yeah, they were. I mean, the teams back then playing in Con were, like probably nearly all of them would have gone on to provincial teams and beyond. The pack alone, your guys like Donica, Miko, Jerry Murray, Ultan O'Callaghan, number 8. All would have played David Corkery, all would have played provincial rugby. Frankie Sheehan, Brian O'Mara, Ron O'Gara, Anthony Horgan, both the O'Mahony brothers. I mean, they were quality teams, so it was, I suppose it was a good stead to be following such successful teams as well. You always, expected to win, had a huge hunger to win, and anytime we went anywhere, like I'm talking about we as me going as a young fella, it was always finals days, or we were expecting to win. It was great. It was really enjoyable.
And did you ever, at this stage now, you've been, I think maybe 10 years, you were basically in Munster Academy from an early age and came through and captain from an early age as well. But did you ever have a day job on the side or a part-time job? I remember talking to Simon Zeeler before, and he said he worked in Roaches because he crashed his sister's Peugeot or something like that, and he had to earn a bit of money to pay for it. Did you ever have a day job or anything like that aside from rugby?
I had a few small jobs. Worked in the bar in Cannes.
Yeah.
As a young fella. My uncle had a kayaking business in West Cork that I used to go down to in summers and give him a hand. Other than that, I was lucky enough to be asked into the academy in my final year of in school, into the sub academy, and kind of stuck at it from there. So I haven't done any proper work really.
Yeah, there's plenty of time for that now.
Yeah, plenty of time for it.
Ian Costello before, I remember chatting to him, and he was talking about you when you were in the academy, and when he was looking after it, and he was saying that within a week of training, he said he knew you were going to be the captain of that side as well. Like, was it something that you had done all the way through? Like, had you captained in Con as well? Was it something that you felt came naturally to you, or is it a learning process as you're going along?
I was always asked to kind of do it, and at the time I didn't know why. A lot of the times it was one of the better players were asked. I don't know whether it was because you were any good at actually being a captain or not. And I've always enjoyed being involved in the planning of the strategy of staying in the loop of what's going on around the place. I've just enjoyed that part of it. Parts of it are paying the whole stuff as well, you know what I mean? But it's a huge honour as well. Above anything else, it's a huge honour, particularly. Con, Munster, Ireland. I've been lucky enough to captain them, and it's been an honour every time I've done it. I joke, but it's the furthest thing from a chore. It's a huge honour. Yeah.
We were talking about as you said, the pride for you, but sometimes you don't get a chance to say it. But I remember even just for me, or just sitting there being proud of someone else, or being proud of another person rugby player, was the time we all went down the UL. That terrible week that you guys all went through when Anthony Foley had passed away, but being there for that kind of press briefing with yourself and Razzie side by side, but like you just spoke from the heart. Like, I always thought that was so impressive at the time, considering you were going through such a tough week. Like, and it must have been maybe one of the toughest things you had to do that whole week. Yeah,
it's definitely the toughest thing I've ever done with regard to being a professional, I suppose, person in the media spotlight. It's definitely the hardest 20 minutes that I've done, but that's not something everyone has to do. Fortunately, not something I ever want to do again, to be honest. But that's just part of the job role, that we needed to do that, and as you said, I was lucky enough to spend a huge amount of time with him, and that meant that I could speak about it and speak from the heart,
And I remember actually talking to Sean O'Brien, and he was saying, like, you were kind of yourself and Sean were both unlucky not to make that Ireland squad that went over to Soldier Field then as well, and played the All Blacks. But I remember he was saying they were coming back from a Zebra game, and they were getting updates from the pilot about how that game was going. Do you remember where you were when you were watching that game, and maybe that moment where you saw this figure of 8 on the field as well? What you felt?
Yeah, I watched it at home. I was very proud, seeing the lads had told me that what the plan was, and seeing the Munster lads up the front, and I thought it was a nice touch to Joe came up and said it to the lads. They said, and it was a lovely touch to be able to do it, and there was lots of occasions that we were able to pay a bit of tribute, and that was a very special one, obviously.
And missing out on that chance to play the All Blacks that time, but then was it 9 months later, and maybe that big England game where you kind of, there was the injury to Jamie just beforehand, and got a chance to go on the Lions tour as well. And when you look back at it, like when it was still, I remember speaking to you maybe that November after that tour, and we were talking about being the captain and all that kind of stuff that was involved in that tour, and family being over there as well. Do you look back at it now, like 2 years later, like a big source of pride as well, and everything that went on over there?
Yeah, absolutely. To be picked for the Lions is incredibly special. I can say I gave it 100%. I loved every minute of it. I watched that that South African tour DVD to death when I was a young fella. You know, seeing the crack, it was kind of the changing over period between amateur and professional. You couldn't be videoing that kind of stuff anymore, nights out and that kind of thing, and not for any particular reason, no, just the fact that it just couldn't be done. And it was, you know, it was an incredible, you know, piece of my career today to be selected for them, and you know, to captain a test team is, you know, not something that many people can say they've done, and certainly something that you know, I'll cherish with me for long after I finish playing rugby.
And is there still then, you know, even the fact that it ended in a draw, and then, you know, you were playing so well with that, the Maori game, Crusaders game leading into that as well, and is there still, would you love again 2021 like to get that chance and again of to go to South Africa maybe as well? Like that's something to be pushing towards. I know there's bigger goals right in front of you, but it's something to be looking forward to as well.
100%. You know, I'd be lying if I said it. You know, obviously I said I loved it, and it's an incredible few weeks, and you know, excuse me, touch wood, if you know, it ever came around again that I was still playing and still fit and performing well enough, you know, I would love to tour with them again. It's so special. I don't think you could you know, talk about it without having experienced it. It's I would imagine a snapshot of amateur rugby, you know, coupled with, you know, some of the greatest players ever to have played the game at that time, and hugely enjoyable, great fun.
And you finally did get a crack then at the I know you'd played them a few times before, but you got a crack at them in Dublin, the All Blacks again then last November, and so remember that game, I was sitting up in the media seats up in the West Stand, and I think you got treated around 3 times for different ailments during the game, but you know, I always kind of remember that moment. I think it was 55 minutes. I was convinced you were off. I think I even tweeted that you were coming off, and you managed to play on, and 5 minutes later does that Bowden Barrett grubber kick through. And can you just remember what's going through your head there when that's happening?
Look, the instinct is when you see a fella put a foot in the ball, you either try and stop it or you try and get back and work hard as you can. And to be honest, it kind of sat up for me more than anything. So I was lucky to be able to get back and get my hands on it, because it was we were under a bit of pressure. But look, you know, it was a good day all round. Obviously, it was another one for the crack afterwards. It was great.
Because I suppose looking back on that game, because I remember the Argentina game the week before. I think you got mad at the match and that, but again, I think maybe at the time your ribs might have been at you or something. But can you remember specifically back then? Were you playing through the pain at that stage yourself?
Probably pain in my lungs more than anything. You know, when you play against teams like that, it's they're lung burners, and you know, the amount of ball and play time is incredible, and you know, they push it to your limit. On top of the fact that they're, you know, Argentina, New Zealand, you know, they're incredibly physical on top of it. So it's a combination of all of them, and you know, the time of the year you're after European games, you know what I mean, you're certainly not 100% going into any of those games. But you know, there's guys out there in the same boat, and you have to battle through them.
And what's going through your head then? Because I think you came off 15 minutes ago, and like apparently the 2013, that was a great atmosphere then as well, that game against the All Blacks. But the noise that were coming out of the Aviva that night, to be on the bench and to be watching the lads then, you know, holding out there for the final minutes, you know, you know, what was it like to kind of be on the bench and watch it all unfold? Yeah,
it was incredible. It was probably I was asked earlier on, probably the best atmosphere by far I've ever played in the Aviva, but certainly up there with probably the best I've ever played in, you know, up there with the Millennium and at the last World Cup against France. You know, it just seemed relentless, the noise from the crowd that night, and you know, I would have preferred to stay on, to be honest with you, because at least you have some sort of a control over what's going on. But it's dreadful having to sit on the bench and watch it, to be honest. And but look, the crowd that day were second to none, and you know, a big factor in what we were doing out there. And you got ahead of yourself at the very end when everybody was celebrating that clip that was going around of you launching yourself up, and then remembering that you were injured as well. Yeah. The dead leg didn't approve of it. No, it was great crack. I was looking back at because there is that thing of it's this thing of
you know, it's a Munster for sort of going to the well as well, and looking back at that, the Grand Slam, and when you guys played against France, and it's this 41 phases, and I remember at the time I looked back at it and you had like 17 involvements in those 41 phases, like primary involvements, and you know, there we are going up until like I think the 81st minute. Like, is it just something that just takes over and it's pure, you know, like you can't feel the pain at this stage because you're in a wave of momentum, or is there any way to describe how you can kind of go to that well and kind of get it this little bit extra out of yourself?
Yeah, it's difficult, certainly. I suppose the days you do all your training for is you know what you do that much in training is what at that point you're an autopilot, is what you automatically do, and you know that's been a big thing from Joe, is if you're regularly doing it, when you get to that state, they're the things you go back to, and you know you got 41 phases. You see the amount of crossfield kick to Earls he gets up over the French winger, incredible take, concentration levels, that breakdown is 20 yards from the next Irish person, but guys turn up, and you're on autopilot, and you're just trying to add as much as you can. Thankfully he knocked it over, because I don't know how much of us had left in the tank at that stage.
One of the most impressive things from that campaign was the England game, and to go over there and the weather to be absolutely brutal and cold and all. But maybe even me as an Irish person, having watched Irish sides over the years, I would have been nervous going there. But there didn't seem to be any nerves from you guys in the day. It just seemed to be this kind of, you all knew what you had to do. It was one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen. For you as well, like, can you remember what it was like to be in that team when everybody knew what their job was and performed everything to such a high level?
It was great. Look, we had some good momentum, and we were playing well. You need a bit of luck as well. We got a couple of bounces of the ball. A couple of our first phase strikes came off nicely as well, and it gives you a bit of momentum, and all of a sudden you have a bit of a gap in the score, and even going back to Wales last Six Nations, when you do get that bit of a gap, it's hard for teams to pull it back nowadays, because you kind of have to get away from your game plan a little bit, which means you're probably opening yourself up defensively. You're trying to play out of your half, and defenses are so good, it's difficult. And again, we certainly got a bit lucky, but we certainly played well that day, and it was a nice feeling afterwards. Again, it was a nice feeling during it. It was one of those games that it wasn't nail biting for the last 3 minutes. It's nice to be able to enjoy that. But look, they're the kind of days you wanna try and recreate and do special things, which is
And there was something at the end of that. There was a few faulty medals. Maybe lads were losing medals all over the place as well. But you gave yours away to Jennifer Malone at the end, and that's a girl who's she beat so many of the Carton House training sessions and follow you guys all over the country as well. But it's just something that you wanted to do. Were you confident that you might get another one, a replacement one, or is it just sore?
No, yeah, she hung around. You touched on how cold it was that day, and she hung around afterwards, and one of the backroom staff came in and said she's outside. So there was a few of us headed out. There was loads of guys. There was photos of guys afterwards, and I brought the trophy out to her and told her to mind it, and she was delighted with herself, and she spent, we were in the dressing room for 45-50 minutes, and after all the game she hung around for that amount of time as well, and as you said, November, February, January, when it's cold in Carton House, and she's there for most of our sessions, that means a lot to us as well. And it's nice to be able to, present her with something small.
And if there's a medal in Japan of any colour, let's say, would you be hanging on to it, or just kind of, again, just let your instinct take over?
No, I haven't. We won't be thinking about that.
Just, I suppose I'll finish up now with just kind of saying, are you guys, like, any family heading over to this World Cup as well, or is it just kind of?
It's wait and see now. Hopefully, selection wise and all that kind of thing. We'll hang off from booking anything until selection goes.
Then give them a heads up get on Skyscanner,
Yeah.
head over.
Panic booking, yeah.
Well, listen, that's it. And as I said, I think last time Haskell, he's on the UK's House of Rugby, he was saying he's looking forward to getting a JCB into your garden one day and helping you out with a bit of landscaping.
I keep an eye on the CCTV.
Cheers for that, Peter.
Thanks.
Some saw us as strange. As troublemakers. As an embarrassment. All we ever saw was a team.
Jamie, Lynne, good to see you here today in this cavernous room, and we're all sitting here nice and cosy together. Today is the big launch of the big Guinness ad, isn't it? About the Pioneers, this women's team as well. But have you guys seen it for long? I know it's going to only get unveiled to the world tonight, but have you guys seen it a couple of days in advance, and what did you make of it as well?
Well, we've got a sneak glimpse of it, all right.
Do you have to sign the NDA before you get to watch it?
Someone's holding a gun to me now. It's really interesting to hear their story, like starting back in 1989, and how the cultural norms were so different back then as they are now, and it's when you look back with today's lens back that far, it must have been, and the challenges they must have faced. It's educational for me, definitely, and then also I couldn't. You just can't. I can't comprehend it being like that today.
Yeah.
Facing those, for me that just doesn't sit well with how today. But back then, that's kind of what the norm was. But that's not saying that was the right thing. But how amazing it was for them to step up to that challenge despite everything that they faced. I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I loved. We were saying before, I loved how just honest and lovely and genuine it was about how much they loved rugby. And there was a couple of quotes, one of the ladies, and I think it was so powerful because, they're these lovely, admirable, older Japanese ladies, and they're speaking about how strong they felt when they were playing rugby, as they had one tooth missing and were crying muck. We're just, from a personal point of view, it resonates so much that we know that sport has the ability to give that to you in buckets, and invest in you as a person and make you grow up as a person, an adult, etc. And just to see that's what they experienced, and because culturally, as Jamie was saying, and the era that they were experiencing that in was just so averse to it, but yet that feeling was just so addictive. They were like, wow, this has to be good, don't tell me that this is not good, because it is good. And I think that was lovely, because that's just the essence of sport, and intuitively you know that it's just so good. So I think from a woman in sport point of view, intuitively that feeling is so good, and that's why you're like, nah, society can't be telling me not to do this thing, because this is great. As a person, this is great. So I'm gonna kind of stay on this track, and hopefully then as years pass by, things have changed and more people are able to kind of get that feeling because there's more availability for it,
Because there's a bit of a promo for it as well that goes out, and you can just see one of the girls with the sack of flour and practicing in the kitchen or something like that as well, and you can just see the mum maybe looking, what is this one up to? Was there anything that you looked at that, or even the documentary as well, where you looked at it and it brought you back to maybe when you were making your own strides in rugby as well, or sport even for that matter?
Yeah, look, I think everybody has them stories. I was watching a documentary during the week, and Aaron Smith was talking about it, and he talked about how much he loves his pass, and he just gets in such a buzz still from the zip when he passes, and you're just like, oh, that's such a gorgeous kind of feeling. I remember I remember it being like Christmas, and I think it was like the 17th of December or something like that, and I remember just at the time I was training outside and it was snowing, and it was completely like the ground was covered, and there was just a pathway that I found that was a hill, and I was like, oh, I can do my intervals there. And you know, at the time we didn't have S&C or any guidance, and here was I thinking, it's the 17th of December, we still really haven't heard about training for the Six Nations yet, like when are we going to hear about it? Like, no, but I still have to train, I still know that I need to be here, and like I did sports science because I had a vague understanding like where I was supposed to be, and like you're out there just kind of slogging it but loving it, like you do it just because you love it, and you know that you're committed to the girls, and you know they're doing the same regardless of the structures around you. So like it does resonate from a structure and a resource point of view, but like I think every person that makes it to playing for their country or representing their country has that kind of personal slog.
And it's like, I suppose, Jamie, then, like even for you, like it looks like back then it just looks like so basic, and what they were doing was so kind of basic as well. But we were only talking to Shane Horgan there a couple of weeks ago, and we were out at like Donnybrook and Energy Park, and he was saying, you know, this is where we were set up. Like Mick Dawson was working out of one of the cabins, like a temporary cabin as well. But like back then, it's like it's only, you can probably see the way women's rugby is gonna go if the proper investment's made in it, because look how far Leinster have come in that last 15 years, and you were involved for a big chunk of that as well.
Yeah, I think like if you take the game as a whole, so rugby as a whole, in order for the game to grow and expand into new markets and new territories and all that sort of thing, I mean, you need everyone playing it, invest in everyone that's playing it. And we talked actually a bit earlier about like the different, so it's like just take rugby for example, like you need really strong men's teams, women's teams, you need good sevens teams, you need good, underage teams, you even need, like, it's great that you even have tag or you need all these different touch points for people to get involved, regardless of whatever sort of, background, creed, colour, sex, whatever. I mean, we want everyone to play it. And if you look at like the 15s game in general, the reason I always love rugby, if I'm really, really honest, is because it was a game that included everyone, all shapes, all sizes, all abilities. Take the Leinster team from a couple of years ago. You had people like Mike Ross, 130 something kilos, right, could do things that I could never do, and vice versa. And then you had me, and then you had someone like, I don't know, Luke Fitzgerald or something. You know what I mean? And you see that in every team. And that's the 15s game. You know what I mean? And I just love the way that rugby does that and includes everyone. And I think the powers that be in world rugby, and when it boils down to the different provinces and countries, that they've all got to invest in all the different layers of the sport in order to grow it out and kind of come up to date, you know what I mean? And it's not going to happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. And the game is only, while it's relative, it's an old sport. Take the men's game is only professional 25 years. You know what I mean? So it's as a professional sport in general, it's very young. So these kind of things don't happen overnight, but that comes with its challenges, and that comes with people having, on 17th of December, is that what you said? Having no real investment, having to go out on your own to train, you know what I mean, and put in those kind of hours and challenges. But when you're in it like that, when you're part of a team like that, and you feel included in a team like that, you'll do anything for them, regardless if you actually get on with them or not. You know what I mean? Because you're all pointed towards that one kind of common collective goal. There was a story there, even just moving away from rugby a little bit. I don't know if you'd both seen that during the World Cup, with that girl Formiga who played for Brazil, and that she had actually started playing. She was playing for, this is her maybe 7th World Cup, but football was still illegal for women in Brazil at the time. Like, to see something like that and to see how far even that's come, and look at the interest there was in the Women's World Cup there as well. It's something to even aim towards, isn't it, for rugby as well? Yeah, so much. It's bonkers. Like, it's crazy stats. Sure, in Ireland, if you were a civil servant and a woman and you got married in the 70s, you had to leave. That was crazy. So when you reflect back and look at these things, like, I'd be really, really hopeful that we are going to make big strides in this
next couple of years, because there's an appetite for it in Ireland. Like, look what, from a civil point of view, like, look what we've achieved from gay marriage and our all of the different things that we have done. So like, I see that we're going to make big gains in the next couple of years from it. But yeah, like, there's loads of examples of that, and we're like, that's complete bonkers.
Yeah.
We have to trust that those examples, we did, there wasn't the traction back then when it was illegal. We have to trust that if you get the sense that, geez, that's wrong, we got to listen to it. You know, people have more voices now and are more willing to call it out. But we have to trust that and make changes, because like, we're talking about a sporting context here. But in general, like, we want more people, like we were talking about it before, nobody owns sport. It's not females or males don't own sport, like, we all own it. So it's not supposed to be, and I think from a women in sport point of view, we look at sport, there is a kind of homogenous view of what sports people need to look like and what we need to do in order to constitute that's the sport, and there's just different versions of it. Like, so if women do something different to men, that's just great, let's embrace it. And if different ethnicities or sexualities or religions do something different, a version of that, then let's just embrace it, because the more people are in it, then crack on, the better it is.
And then even for you, like Ireland have had their, you know, with the women's team of, you know, they were playing in tiny venues sometimes and small crowds, and the backing wasn't always there, but it's going in the right directions. Leinster have this double header coming up at the weekend as well. But for you, when you were playing as well, who was the team that maybe you were always like, Jesus, they have it, you know, like, they have a good setup there? Like, was there a team that always sort of, England, the All Blacks would play? Yeah.
Always England. And the thing is, it's one of those things, and everybody has that rivalry. It's probably like the tennis rivalry at the moment with Nadal and, you know, Federer and Djokovic. They probably hate each other so much, but love each other because they're better because of it. You know? We hated England because they were so good, but they made us so much better. And I love so much flag bearers. I love so much people that are out there saying, this is the way, this is the direction that we're going, as opposed to kind of shrinking back to the common denominator. I love that so much. So crack on, England, and the things that they're doing. And it's our fault that we're not keeping up with it, you know, because we have the capability, just so that we're not doing it. In
a way, like, yeah, as much as Ireland didn't really achieve what they wanted to achieve in that Women's World Cup that was held here, good in a way to actually see what women's rugby is capable of, and you saw that kind of final as well, like, and the standard that was played at as well up in Belfast.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was I think I'm underplaying it now. I think there was 7 tries, maybe 9 tries in a World Cup final. When did you get that? Oh, it was absolutely such great rugby.
And Jamie, for you, was it England again, or like, I look back at it yourself, and is the All Blacks, were they the standard bearer for you guys, or was it more the kind of local thing of coming up against England and testing yourself against them?
I think, for me anyway, for kind of my career, New Zealand were the standard bearer. They were the one team that for like years we didn't beat.
Yeah.
I mean, where we'd get to half time and be just ahead or even, and then they'd blow us out of the water in the first 10 minutes of the second half. Or we'd be, then we started getting to the stage where, we could go to 60 minutes and then they pull away. And then we got, I think it was down in Christchurch, where we got the draw.
Yeah.
And then we got a drop goal, you know what I mean? And then in 2013, and you know, and that's the level that we always kind of put ourselves against them. But they were number 1 in the world as well, so that's kind of what made sense, I suppose, at the time. But in terms of like setup and investment, you know, we got oodles of that over the years, and we just made sure to make the most of that, because we wanted to kind of return that investment for fans, for the people who invested in the actual game itself, and for the people like in Leinster and Ireland who gave us those facilities to kind of be able to go full time into it and completely kind of give yourself over to the sport. That's what you want to kind of give back in that, and yourself as well. You wanted to be able to say that you did everything that you could. But yeah, to answer your question, New Zealand were the standard bearer, and for my entire career, like that's I never liked the fact that people were like, you gave a good effort. You know what I mean? And I'd be like, it would drive me mad, because I'd be like, I appreciate it. You know, I'd never give out to them for it. It'd be my own internal demon monologue that would have going on, but I'd be like, you know, that's not good enough. You know, I'm not playing this just to have a good, you know, kind of get a pat on the back and say, you know, good effort, but like, it's New Zealand. It's like, it shouldn't be like that. You know what I mean? Ireland, we punch above our weight so often, you know, in all manners of sports. that we should, you know, not be just there to take part, you know, we should be there to try and be number one in it. And there's nothing wrong with that ambition, you know, nothing wrong with that ambition whatsoever. It's just about how you go about it now, but having that ambition is pretty healthy.
There was one, it was actually, now we're on the All Blacks, actually, I haven't really ever got a chance to talk to you about that game where you finally did break the hoodoo as well, but if Lynne, if you'll indulge me for a second. But
well, if I stand corrected, didn't the women's team beat them first?
Yeah, that was 2013 World Cup, wasn't it?
2014.
14 World Cup, yeah.
Yeah, and then the 20s then beat them.
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
watching them in South Africa.
At the time, oh yeah, and that 2016. But yeah, that one, like for you, that game, the whole thing with Joe Schmidt coming up to you guys before it and letting you know about this figure eight of 8 as well, and then for you to be a number 8 as well, like in that game when it gets done. What can you remember that moment of standing there?
It kind of got flagged with us. Can't remember if it was the Thursday or the Friday, but on the Friday we were like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it properly. Like, A, we don't want to look like idiots.
Yeah.
B, we want to do the symbolism that it was, and then knowing how important the haka is to people. We didn't want to offend the haka, but we also wanted to. This is the beauty of rugby, where it's like like, you know, the haka, for example, is such a heavily significant thing culturally for New Zealand, for Maoris, and it's great that it's part of the game. And we were like, they allowed us to kind of do our interpretation of what was important to us as well.
Yeah.
And that's why we made sure we all lined up and knew what we had to do and when and how it all looked. And I never realised how, because when we were in it, we kind of got into our positions, and then the haka went on. You're zoning in, you're trying to eyeball a guy and all this.
Yeah.
You're kind of just in the moment. It was only afterwards that people talked to me about how the crowd started slowly realising
catching on,
what we were doing and how they got behind it. And then when I saw some of the imagery afterwards, it couldn't have turned out any better, and a great way to pay kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not condolences, but
to respect. Homage.
To Axel.
Yeah, and then that one as well. I always loved it. The just before the break was up the left hand side. There was a scrum that you went into, and you guys had tried to outrun and gas out the All Blacks in that game as well. But you were just at the back of it, and it's a big deep breath like that, and you go into it, and then I think Jared Payne threw a pass over the top as well. But how did you have the energy at the end to pull this little pullback pass? Like, when was that conceived, or was that just something you had in the playbook to set up Henshaw?
We had that move before, like, and I'd imagine they probably had that move in their playbook. And we just thought it was the right time, right place to call it. And it's funny, you never, like, obviously you try and get yourself fit enough so you're good coming into those last 20 minutes, and I tended to play 80 minutes, so I was kind of fit for that 80 minutes. Still a fast game, but I just knew, it's funny, you know when a move, it's hilarious, well, not hilarious, but you know in the moment when a move works perfectly, because it's just, you're always looking for certain things. And I knew the minute I came out, I think it's Surveyor was the 7, wasn't it?
Yeah, you came on,
He came really hard at me, but I got to the 10, but I knew Surveyor was really lateral, so, you know, best luck trying to stop Robbie Henshaw when you're kind of like square on with him, but when you're lateral, like, I just knew that all I had to do was just make sure I just loft it up for Robbie and not have it down low. No, he still had a bit of work. He had a bit of work to do, but you just knew leaving it up that it was a try all day. You just turn around. That's why there's a picture, and it's just like I'm just standing there. I'm not even beside Robbie. I'm just standing there like this because I know it's in. But yeah, good times.
And then, like, because we were chatting to Peter O'Mahony, was here yesterday. He's the new face of M&S. Basically, he's going to be covering all their catalogues. He's going to be on the front of. But we were chatting to him, and it's only when you go back over the last 3 or 4 years, and it's almost like it was a G-up. I was reminded him, like, when you did this, and then you beat France 41 phases, and then you went to Twickenham and won a Grand Slam, and then he starts talking about it, and then because there is this mood at the moment where there's not like huge confidence in this Irish team at the moment going over to Japan, but it's not so long ago that they actually did some great things. Like, so Are you in that kind of? Are you a bit more optimistic than maybe it'll take a few more warm-up games to get us into the mood? But are you optimistic for this squad heading over to Japan?
Yeah, look, they have the calibre, don't they? And like we've seen that in action. There's something I remember thinking it was last year when when Ireland beat New Zealand, November last year, and I remember there was something around like mentally knowing that you can win, mentally being able to own that, and Ireland are very comfortable being underdogs and are comfortable going in saying let's give it an ash, guys, or whatever, and that's not necessarily okay. There's something definitely around you growing and evolving and being capable and wanting to win and being capable and wanting to be favourites. So we've seen Ireland in that form. We know that they have the talent, and you'd be hopeful that they're going to peak again. We haven't seen enough of it to see, because it was a mixed up team obviously on Saturday, and you'd be really hopeful that we're going to see that form coming to a head over the next couple of weeks. We have got the talent. It's going to be tough, because what we were saying before is that although it kind of seems New Zealand are a little bit off the boil, you know, what teams are in contention. If New Zealand are off the boil, that's a good sign, but that's probably going to turn around in the next couple of weeks. And you've got South Africa, Argentina, Australia are back in form, you know, Wales. Let's just see what happens. England, like what they produce at the weekend as well, and Ireland. So it's going to be a tough one, obviously. We just hope they got it back to Ireland is that they're going to find their form.
Mm-hmm. And then, do you want to add to that? We're going to be grand, are we?
I mean, I would always stay in your lane. So what do I mean by that? Like, you're never as bad as they say, you're never as good as they say, right? Just try and stay somewhat in the middle, right? And I think this Irish team is very good at trying to stay in the middle. They're very consistent. That's one thing you can say about this squad. And I think, if you look at the two contrasting, the Grand Slam year in 18 and this year, the margin for error is so fine between the two. So take the France game that you mentioned.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I mean, he doesn't get that drop goal. Yeah. It's a different story.
Mm-hmm.
People forget that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they forget how close the Wales game actually was until the intercept.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you could say the same about a couple of games, the result going the other way. So what I'm trying to say is don't turn into a bad team overnight.
Yeah.
And I don't think the guys will be lacking in confidence. They've had a lot of time together, and I think it's probably gotten tougher, not because of them actually, because of other teams. Like South Africa are in really good form, New Zealand are really good. Well, look, they lost the game, but I think they're in good form.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They'll be alright.
Yeah, they'll be grand.
Yeah.
So that quarter final, regardless, is going to be. It has gotten a lot tougher.
Yeah, and then I want to just to wrap up by finishing up by talking about your first game for Ireland, and where was it, and what was it like, and who was in the crowd, and how much things have changed.
Two people in the crowd.
The Cantwells.
Mom and Dad.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. My mother didn't come and watch me play for about 5 years, and it was down at Thomond Park, and I remember her coming, and she came around the corner, and we were lined up for the anthems, and I shake my legs. I didn't realise I do, but I tend to shake my legs in the anthems just because you're nervous, whatever. And my mother came around the corner, saw me shake my legs, and thought I was afraid, and left. She thought I was scared and left. Honestly, that's how archaic it was. But 79-0 in Worcester against England.
A win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 79-0. I went on as a winger, and it was a frightening experience.
Wow.
Honest to God. But hey, look, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, well listen, and if anybody wants to say, have a look at that, it's a great little documentary and a video that's gone out as well, and thanks for chatting to us as well today.
No worries.
Cheers.